Well, good morning, beloved ones. Turn to someone and tell them the way out is the way in. The way out is the way in. The way out is the way in. Or you could tell them the way in is the way out. The way in is the way out. Yes, the way in is the way out. What an amazing journey this thing called life is. It's an amazing journey. Just to be here and to be able to maneuver through all of the myriad of ups and downs and ins and outs and twists and turns that life presents us. But to be able to experience that is a blessing, you know. Because the other option, right, is to not have the opportunity to experience that. Now, while this journey we call life is exciting with all of these unexpected events and happenings and twists and turns and revelations, one can get a little dizzy from all of the changes that life takes us through. So clearly, it would be an absolute blessing to learn how to maneuver through it all, right? Wouldn't you want to know how to maneuver through all of it, all the obstacles, all the unknowns, all the demonstrations, to be able to move through it with tremendous peace and joy and acceptance and fluidity, being in that flow of whatever it is, feeling grounded and feeling completely at one, or as we like to say in truth, at one-ment, which is atonement, at one-ment with life, on whatever terms life presents to us. That's powerful to be able to do that. And that's exactly why I went back to India again. I went with the prospect of having a spiritual shift, or an awakening in consciousness, or a shift in consciousness, or some spiritual brain surgery, as they like to call it. You know, some work on what's happening in my head and brain and heart and mind in my experience. And I wanted to do that to see if I could have that shift so that it would move me closer to being able to move through life, being at one with spirit and being grounded enough to experience life as it is, to transform all of the issues and the blocks and the things that keep me from experiencing deep inner happiness and peace and joy, sense of fulfillment, gratitude, connectedness to all that lives. And so I thought, yes, this is what I want. If there's an opportunity or someone knows a way to get there, I'm going. You know how we are, right? We're seeking. We're seekers. Well, it's time to be a finder, but we're seekers. And so there's some things that we were told that you'd be able to experience when you are able to really shift into a higher consciousness. We talk about that a lot in New Thought, moving into higher consciousness, shifting our perspective. And when you do that, these are some of the experiences or signs and experiences of shifting into a higher consciousness that you will have when you move into that level of awareness. And these are some of the things. It's you'll experience no suffering. I like that. No past, no future. No discontent. No fear. No hurt. No controller. No conflict. No images. No thought disturbance. No judgment. No daydreaming. Declutching of the mind. Feeling empty, which means just to be open and receptive, empty so that you can be filled. Feeling complete, feeling causeless joy, feeling unconditional love, feeling wonderment, feeling everything is happening automatically, feeling everything is perfect, feeling silence, and experiencing reality as it is. Now, I thought, who in their right mind wouldn't want to have or to experience most of the things on this list, right? Wouldn't you want to have some of these things or most of these things? Yeah, I would too. Sure, I sure could use no suffering. I could have a good dose of that. Or no inner conflict. I would love to be free of judgment and maybe not getting hurt or wounded or having no fear or feeling causeless joy or feeling wonderment. You know, when was the last time you felt wonderment? Most of the time we're jaded, right? We're gone, life, doing life. But what about wonderment and joy and peace? I would like to experience all of the things on this list. Now, part of our experience there was going through several processes to help clear up any inner blocks that we might have. And then through grace and the grace of the divine working on our conditioned brain patterns, because all of us are functioning as a result of our conditioning, our conditioned patterns, right, that we have. But to clear up the brain patterns, then we would have a shift in consciousness, and we would then awaken into a new way of experiencing life. Not just living life, but experiencing life, a new way. Right now, it's hard for most of us to experience the deeper level of spirit. It's hard for us to really move into that higher consciousness of joy and the like because we're so stuck in the mind's patterns of functioning. We're kind of stuck in our past programming and conditioning because that's what conditioning is, right? When you get conditioned, you're just kind of in a groove and in a rut. You keep doing the same thing. We're stuck in our unconscious expressions. And what happens is when we keep functioning from that level, it's hard for us to free ourselves because you kind of keep digging a deeper groove. You know, the more depressed you are, the more depressed you become. Right? The more upset, you ever notice the more upset you are, the more upset you become. So you get into a groove, and the more we get stuck in these negative patterns, we're digging ourselves into a deeper, deeper hole in the groove, and we just keep repeating the same thing. I don't know if any of you saw the film or remember the film, What the Bleep Do We Know? But they explain this process of what happens in the brain when you keep redoing a repeated negative habit and how it creates a neural pathway so that your brain triggers you to do the same thing, have the same response. They poking you, ouch, it's the same, you know, whatever it is, you keep responding in that same way. And the more you respond, the deeper it goes. It's hard to get out of that. And we all have our own particular programming from childhood, from everybody's experience is different, but whatever your experience is, you have your programming. What this new child that was being born comes in here, but it's going to be imprinted, right, by its experiences at a very young age before we have the wherewithal and the consciousness to say, no, I don't want that. I don't want that experience, or I don't want to think that way. It gets imprinted. That's just the journey of life. That's the human condition. All right, so we understand that. But so what this process was, it was to help declutch us from the mind so that our fears, the fears or our thinking gets warped, the problems, all this stuff, we're just kind of a mess. And we need some way out of this condition. We need a new groove. I know Stella got her groove back, but we need a new groove. Some new patterns to be developed, some new neural pathways that will rewire us for joy, for bliss, for love, for fulfillment, for gratitude, for thinking life is wonderful and the wonderment of life. We need some new grooves to seeing life with a new awareness and a new understanding and feeling the oneness of it all and our connection to all that is, being one with God, one with the divine, one with good. So, this is what the programs at Oneness University are designed to do, to help move you out of the old grooves into the new grooves. And although, the teachings are different, the culture is different, some of the theological perspective, is different, and we have to, lay that aside. If you go with an open mind, that's fine. You can't fit, your stuff into another culture. Sometimes it doesn't work. Your theology into another theology. We went being open and receptive to receive. So whatever good I could glean from it, that's fine. So the programs were designed to sort of help declutter. They're designed to help take you out of the mind's activity of how it continues to function and develop these limited and negative grooves. Now, after 6 days of teaching, this was a week-long process, but after 6 days of teaching and processes that we went to, we were to experience this shift, and I won't tell you what it went. We went in the temple, and it's a whole process that we went to, and you can ask people individually what that was like and what that was about. But I will say that for me and many others, we actually experienced some kind of shift. We could actually feel that, or at least I could. So something was going on up here, right? But then, so after the 6th day, on the 6th day, the last day that we had this experience in the temple, that evening we were to be given our status. We were going to get some certificates, and we were going to get our status as to whether or not the shift had taken place for us. And just where we landed on the scale of awakening. Now, this was a small class. It was designed there were 54 New Thought ministers and lay people. So there were people from science and mind, religious science, some other, One Thought, One God, in Baltimore. So 54 of us, which is a relatively small group, but they designed this course just for us. So on that evening we go, and to my horror, it seems that we were going to be getting our certificates and the state, whether someone was awakened or not, and the number of level that they had, the level or the number that they had assigned to you. And we were going to be doing this in a group. And so they were going to be calling out your name and saying whether you awakened or not or had some kind of shift. And they were going to give you your number, right? The level that you landed. Now, when I heard that, the mind, right? My mind kicked in. Right there, I had judgment. I said, I don't like that. I had evaluation, fear, comparison, all this stuff just came up. Because I'm thinking, well, what if somebody doesn't? Everybody's going to know somebody didn't get away. What kind of, that's not the way to do it, blah, 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 blah. All this stuff is going into my head at the time. Well, I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, and there are some people, not everybody, but there were some people who, people cheered when they heard their numbers, and I'm like, oh. Now, Sumter is an S, so it's at the end of what? The alphabet. So I have to wait, and I'm hearing all of these names and whatever, and meanwhile, there's more and more anxiety building up. Finally, my name is called, and I'm deemed to have shifted in consciousness and to have awakened on some level. That's all right, really, because we're all doing that. We're all in process. That's my whole thing. But anyway, so I was deemed, okay, some shift, and I knew something took place, but some shift had taken place. And my number was called. To my horror, it was a low number. And I thought, oh my God, I have failed at spiritual awakening. All of a sudden, I didn't hear anything else after that. My mind went blank, not from the silence of the mental chatter, but it was just like stunned, right? And, I'm thinking, oh my God. And instantly, all this stuff, they call them charges, came up. Now, even though I'm thinking, because you don't really fail at any kind of spiritual endeavor, but that's how the mind does, right? The mind wants to convince you that somehow you have failed or you did it wrong or something's not quite right or whatever. This is what the mind does. And so it was having a field day. And I was going from suffering to hurt to conflict to judgment to anger to woundedness to shock, dismay, embarrassment, all this stuff, the whole 9 yards. And I was in it, deep. And I couldn't, it took, well, I'll tell you, I mean, I came out of it, but it took me a couple of days of just like, what? Right? What? But you see, I went for, I tell y'all everything, right? I just tell you what's happening in me because this is the journey. And my journey is no different than anybody else's journey. So what I do, I know you all do too, so it's no big deal. So that's the way it goes. So, well, one of the teachings is you got to practice inner integrity, so I'm just telling you what was going on. And so I went for spiritual awakening, but what I got was a spiritual wake-up call. I got a wake-up call. Because what that did for me was it caused me to see that while I've been busy making sure that everyone I serve as a minister is healed and blessed and safe and secure and has what they need and is on their journey and feels that they can do it, I forgot to put on my own oxygen mask. I forgot to do my own work. When I was in ministerial school, we had one of my metaphysics teacher, Reverend Marvin Anderson, and he would tell us this all the time. He would warn us, and he would say to us, he said, just because you will be doing spiritual work, don't get fooled into thinking that you're doing your spiritual work. You see, because I pray, I meditate with you all, I counsel, I teach classes, I give talks, I read spiritual books, I do all that stuff. That has nothing to do with my spiritual work. That's the work I'm doing for here in service. But it has nothing to do with my spiritual work, my own oxygen mask. So after a few days of intense suffering, and and we're going to talk about that next week, but after a few days, because this is what we do, the mind sets up a situation where we suffer because it's not like we thought it was going to be. It's not like we want it to be. Things aren't happening this way. It's supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be there, blah, 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 blah. And we have conflict and we suffer. So after a few days of suffering, then I'm trying to walk around with, getting my head and dealing with all the charges and emotions that were coming up. And when I got home, I realized that I could simply really use this experience as a wake-up call and make the commitment to make use of the awakening or whatever it was that was happening, the shifting, to actually transform my life into all those things that I've been seeking for, all the things on the list, right? No suffering, no hurt, no fear, no control, no conflict, no thought disturbance, no judgment, right? The clutching from the mind, and feeling full and empty and open, feeling complete, causeless joy, wonderment, unconditional love. I want all this stuff. This is what I've been doing. We're all doing this, looking for this. Are you not looking for this? Yes. And so I decided that, all right, if they've given me a jump start on the journey through the shift, that's my work. Because the other thing I realized is nobody can tell you really where you are. I know where I am in spirit. I also know I have work to do. So let me not get hung up on somebody else's saying to me who I am and where I am and all that. That's good. I value it. But I value the work that I need to do more, knowing that I belong to spirit, and spirit has always guided me, always directed me. So I said, okay, fine, let me use this experience to build on the consciousness that I want to build. And I decided that I would not let anything stand in my way of my spiritual practice until I can actually say that I feel and have and are experiencing everything on this list. I will know that. Nobody will have to tell me. I will know that I have moved into a new level of consciousness. So I learned some things. Here's what I learned. First of all, that transformation is not easy. It's like a birth process. Giving birth to a new baby ain't easy, okay? You men, yeah, but women don't. It's painful, right? It's a painful process for you and for that little soul trying to struggle to be born into a new experience. We got to struggle sometimes and put forth effort to come into a new experience. So it's not for the faint-hearted. We all want to be transformed. We want to change. We want to have things change. We want to be changed. But we're not always aware of the inner work that is needed to bring about that change. We just say, I want things to be different. So let's take a look for a moment of some true things that are necessary for transformation to occur. Because if you now, let's say you want to unfold or express in a particular way, you've got to be able to clearly and completely see where you might be in the way. Or you've got to be able to see what things or what it is within you that might be standing in the way of your being where you want to be. Because we're conditioned to look out, or we're not conditioned to look at self, to look inwardly. But if we're really going to talk about having a deep transformation, a lasting transformation, where we are able to uncover the glory of our dynamic and magnificent selves, unencumbered by all these things, fear and hurt and judgment and depression, whatever it is, despair, unencumbered. If we're to experience ourselves like that, we've got to do some inner work. We've got to be able to see. So it means you've got to face yourself, and it takes courage to face yourself. Courage to see yourself. That's what this process is all about. And so the first thing you need if you're going to really transform is you're going to need some courage. You're going to need some fortitude inside to be able to examine yourself, to see what habits or what responses or choices or charges or conditions or programs or judgments or behaviors or whatever it is that you have, that you got to be able to see the egoic mind at work, doing what the mind does. Because the mind is wonderful. It plays ego games. It has all these things, and it keeps you asleep. It keeps you identified with it as opposed to being identified with your true and divine nature. It causes you to think you're the ego as opposed to the child of a good, great God, a divine and magnificent being, right? Free, unencumbered, an open channel through which the divine flows fully and freely. So the mind does what the mind does. And you have to be able to, they say declutch. They call it declutching from the mind. It doesn't mean that you're going to lose your mind, although I did a talk one time. That's a good thing sometimes. But you've got to be able to get out and stand back and look at the mind and recognize when the mind is simply telling its stories, or when the ego is expressing its fears and its distortions. You've got to be able to see what the mind creates, the stuff, the ego, the stuff that gets created in your life. You've got to be able to detect and see all your different personalities that show up, the kind you, the loving you, the not so loving you, the not so kind you. We love the good things about our personalities and very rarely talk about or let anybody see or acknowledging all the other things of our personalities that are not so kind and so good and so loving. That's hard to see and that's hard to look at. But if you're really going to transform and be healed, we must be able to look at those things, right? Because those are the things that are standing in the way and blocking you. So we've got to have some courage and awareness. Because if you can do that, then if you can shine some light into the dark places within your own consciousness, into the light of your own awareness, and see yourself, or see the mind's activity, healing and transformation will occur. It will occur. Because we've got to remember, you can't heal what you can't see, right? If you got a blind spot, how are you going to work on that? So some other things are needed. I think you need some joy. Because looking at oneself can be a daunting experience and a depressive activity if you let it be. And so you need to be able to do it with the light touch, you know? Because after a few days of being stuck in my shame, my blame, my hurt, my pain, I decided that I needed to just get over it. And I began to laugh at myself and what I put my own self through as a result of my own interpretation of what I thought it all meant, right? What I think somebody else is thinking. But that was all of what? My creation. It was my stuff. And so I decided that I needed to just laugh at myself because it's like, wow, look what we do to ourselves. Look what we put ourselves through. I said, I'm going to have the light touch. I want to experience this causeless joy that they talk about. See, because the scripture says, the joy of the Lord will be your strength. Right? The joy of the Lord. And I needed some inner strength. It takes inner strength to change. It takes inner strength to be transformed. So I said, I need some joy. I want this causeless joy. That's the one one of the few things I picked on that I wanted to work with. Causeless joy. Don't you love that? I don't have to have a reason. I'm just happy. As Eckhart Tolle says, I'm in joy in myself. Right? That's what he says. I'm in joy in myself. Because when you get to the level where you can experience joy in yourself, regardless of what is taking place outside of yourself, then you have something. You're not at the whim of, the world's tossing you to and fro. You're not at the whim of this circuit. You didn't get the job, or you got divorced, or you got some prognosis of an illness. All those things that just, and it takes us here and it takes us there. But when you experience causeless joy, infinite peace, regardless of outer circumstance, you have touched the divine. See, you're not at the whim and the mercy of anything out here any longer. Then some of the things on this list, no conflict, no suffering, no control, none of that, all that goes. And you experience bliss, you experience oneness, you experience acceptance, you experience ease, you experience grace, you experience life, letting it be. Not struggling against it. You just simply let what is to be. So I've been working with causeless joy, and in my meditation time, experiencing that. So if you want to, so we know we got to have some courage, we got to have some joy, right? So if you really want to have this transformation to take place within you, you might have to change the way you do things. Transformation means a transforming of form. You've got to change the form, because Albert Einstein said that you can't solve a problem at the same level of what? The problem. You just can't do that, which is what we do, which is causes suffering and pain. Something else, you have to either get above it, move beyond it, transcend it, but there's something else that you must do. And so it might be you have to change your thinking, you might have to change your habits, you might have to change your perspective, your conditioning, whatever. But whatever it is, you've got to do it differently. So I've committed that I'm going to do at least 2 hours of spiritual practice every day. There is no reason why I cannot do that. I can get up at 5 o'clock and meditate and do my sadhana, which is my spiritual practice, till 7. Or if need be, I can get up at 4 o'clock. I can get up at any time. You see, because that's what it's going to take. And so I've made this commitment that I will do my spiritual practice and my work. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to run in and say a quick prayer, oh, God, could you have me blessings, thank you, and gone. We do that, right? You're laughing because, you think if I got 10 minutes, all right, God, you got 10 minutes. 10 minutes of my time. Here's my prayer, here's my need. I need you to do this, 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 and this. And then we're gone, thinking we've made some kind of connection. Thinking we've done some kind of work. You got to make yourself available and present. So I've increased my time that I do some japa yoga, and I do some working with my chakras, opening up my energy centers. I do some time with sitting there and setting my prayer intentions and actually doing the work. And so it's taking me right now about 2 hours to do it, and that's fine. I got up Saturday to go play golf, and we were going to play golf at 7 o'clock. I said, well, okay, I got to get up at 4 o'clock to do my work. And you know what? My day went so beautifully. I had fun. I did my work. But it stemmed with me taking that time and making that commitment. So that's the first thing that I'm doing that I see is really blessing me and transforming me and helping me. And the other thing that I've begun doing is I am observing the mind. And I'm trying to stop calling it my mind. It's just the mind. Everybody's got one. It's the same mind, right? There's only, what do we say in New Thought? There's only one mind, but we express sometimes this lower level of this, what we think are our minds. And so I started to observe the mind or my mind or whatever when it wants to tell stories about what's happening, when it wants to defend itself or come up with excuses or reasons, or when it wants to engage in one of those things on the list, controlling or judging or fearing or hurting or being in conflict. When it wants to, I just watch it. I just begin to see when it wants to do those things, right? Or any other kind of escape mechanism that the mind engages in that would keep me from seeing where I am participating and generating my own misery. I want to see where I'm doing that. Because if I can't see where I am doing that, I'll always think you are doing it. Right? And if I think you are doing it, then what hope is there for me? I can't change you. But until I can see where I am creating it and participating in it, whatever it is, or whatever shows up. So I'm doing that. And if you want, I want to experience this deeper spiritual awakening, and that has to be my number one priority. This is my outer work in the world to support you to do, but then I must do first and foremost my inner spiritual work, because I can't help you if I can't help myself. So this is what it is. So I'm doing that. So you got to have, because you can't have any excuses, no reasons, and we can all find excuses. Every one of us can find an excuse for why we don't get up and meditate at least for an hour every day. If I were to ask you why, you're going to come up and tell me something, right? Got to get to work or whatever. But there's an hour out of the 24. You can find an hour out of 24 hours if you want it. If you want something bad enough, you will find it. You will do it. A drowning man wants air like nothing else, right? Same thing, same principle. So you got to do that. You got to have some courage to face. You need some joy to do it with the light touch. And you got to have some stick-to-itiveness. You got to have some discipline. That's the D word. That's right, discipline. You're going to be a disciple, you need to have some discipline. You can't grow without spiritual discipline. You need to practice the spiritual art that you know that is life. So if you don't discipline yourself in your spiritual practices, you're just going to be fooling yourself. You're just going to be asleep thinking you're awake. You've got to learn how to discipline. Here's a good formula for helping you to develop some stick-to-itiveness, some discipline. Whether let's say you're working on some dreams or some goals or desires or wishes and wants, it has to be with this, and I've shared this with you before. The formula is this: intent plus desire or passion plus effort yields results. Intent plus desire or passion about that intention, and effort plus effort yields results. You have to be clear on your intentions. Now, that's the first starting point. That is, I want this, I want to do that, blah, 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 blah. But most of us don't get past the intentions, right? So you've got to have a clear intention, but then there must be some passion about that intention, some deep desire about that intention. You've got to want it bad enough to actually do something about it. If you don't want it bad enough to do something about it, you will not have it. It'll be an excuse. It'll be a reason why it didn't occur for you. It'll be some other reason why somebody else got what you thought should have been yours, and all the story. The mind will just love it and create wonderful stories. But you will not be fulfilled. So you've got to have some type of intent, passion about your intention so that you put forth the effort, some kind of action to display. Because if those three things are there, are operating within you, you will experience some type of result or some kind of achievement. Now, for the most part, what I'm talking about is about, it seems to be about these outer things, acquiring things or changing some outer condition or some circumstance or reaching for some outer goals and the like. But for actual transforming your inner world or your personality traits or your childhood programming and conditioning or your emotional charges or your blocks or your unconscious patterns and behaviors, that is going to take some intervention. It's going to take some intervention. Now, you could spend years and lots of money going into therapy, which is viable and it works. Takes a long time, it's kind of expensive and costly, but it works. Or you could ask for some divine intervention. See, you could ask for some divine intervention. Heretofore, we have asked God for things, or for things out here to change, or situations. But there is a way to ask for a deep and lasting transformation, a attaching or declutching from the mind chatter that keeps you stuck and in this inner place of turmoil or whatever. And this divine intervention that you can ask for, Jesus called it the Holy Spirit. It was the teacher, the revelator, the healer, the comforter. You know, all these things to work on our inner selves, that Spirit of God that can move us to where we want to be, that can help us and support us and nourish us. Sometimes we don't even bother to ask for the Holy Spirit. We're not conditioned to do that. We're going to ask for here and there. I'm going to ask Mo. I'm going to ask Larry. I'm going to ask Curly. I'm going to ask somebody. You know, maybe I'll even ask God, but, you know, you have a comforter. Jesus said, I have gift. This is a gift. I'm leaving you a gift. It's the Holy Spirit who will comfort you, teach you, heal you, reveal what you need to do. It'll do the inner work with you and for you and upon you if you recognize it. So that's one thing we're going to work on, is learning how to deal with this gift of divine intervention. The other way to move from declutching from the mind's activity this is what we learned while we were there in India, is learning what they call the art of suffering. What? That doesn't sound good. Especially for us New Thought people, I don't want to do that. I'm trying to get away from that. But all the great sages and saints and people who have really reached a certain level of consciousness understood the secret and the art of suffering. And if we can do it, it will free us like nothing else. And so we're going to cover that next week, but I'll give you a hint. It goes like this. Suffering leads to surrender. Because when you suffer enough, you get to the point where there ain't nothing else you can do, right? You got to give it up. Suffering can lead to surrender. Surrender can lead to grace and healing. Grace and healing can lead you to true transformation and spiritual shifting and awakening into a new consciousness and a new way of being. But there's an art to do it. It's a simple thing, but it doesn't sound pleasant. But when you practice it, it becomes very, very easy. So I hope you're going to join us next week as we look further into this whole thing of transformation and shifting into an awakened experience and consciousness. And so I leave you with this thought. The way out is the way in, and the way in is the way out. So chew on that till next week. Blessings.